John Coli with OKRaw.com to do another exciting episode for you, coming at you from my beautiful backyard garden we got here on my amazing chocolate mint. It's definitely one of my favorite mints, and we got on my cauliflower growing behind me. So in this episode, we're going to be answering your guys' questions. If you guys have a question you want me to answer in an upcoming Q&A episode, please post it in the link down below in the description, which will go to my YouTube channel page underneath the posts tab. This formerly was the community tab, now called the post tab, and there's a section there where you guys could answer your question, and it may appear in next month's Q&A. All right, so the first question is from OKB6up. How many calories of fruit every day would you say is too much? Thank you. All right, so, you know, the answer really is it depends on you. Each person could handle more or less fruit in a day, you know, depending on how it affects your blood sugar. Also, particularly, what kind of fruit are you choosing? Are you choosing wild blueberries that are very high in polyphenols, low in sugar, or are you choosing fruits like bananas? Huge difference between those foods in nutrition and how they are absorbed into your body. That being said, you know, traditional culture people would say, oh, you need to eat 300 to 500, you know, calories of fruit a day to kind of be healthy. And unfortunately, most Americans and people around the world do not even eat that much fruit, right? That being said, some raw vegans out there would say 100% fruit, you know, and getting all your calories from fruit is best because fruit is the best food on the entire planet. Now, I personally definitely used to think fruit is definitely a very good food and one of the best foods on the planet. I have never eaten fruit to the exclusion of other foods, nor do I recommend that. That being said, when I was younger, I was able to handle my fruit better, and I ate higher percentages of fruit, maybe 60 to 70% fruit. Later, I dropped it down to like less than 49% calories of fruit. And these days, I'm maybe around 30% calories from fruit being sweet fruit. I am not counting non-sweet fruits, you know, like tomatoes and eggplants and peppers and cucumbers, zucchinis, squashes, and otherwise. The problem I have with overeating fruit, because you're eating too much, is that when you're overeating fruit, say 80% of your calories come from fruit, now you have 20% of your calories left to come from other foods. Hopefully they should be coming from something like leafy greens, as well as other vegetables, and I would even encourage people to eat other raw foods, such as sprouted beans and grains, you know, raw nuts and seeds. And if you want to go to the cooked food side, which I have no problems with these days, you know, my personal belief is that at my fruit calorie percentage is 30%, and having some heat processed whole foods such as purple rice, purple potatoes, purple sweet potatoes, you know, some of the highest quality heat processed foods that's cooked in an instant pot under pressure for short durations of time to basically take the place of a higher percentage of fruit is actually more beneficial in my opinion, right? So that's just for me. I'm not going to talk about what's for you. Each person needs to find out what's best for them. However, in most raw food diets, unfortunately, fruit is overemphasized at the expense of eating other healthy plant foods, including especially raw leafy greens and raw vegetables, even sprouted nut seeds, and legumes and grains, you know, that you could sprout, which most people on a raw food diet don't even eat at all. All right, next question is from Smooth Hershey 4704. Best tools to vacuum seal mason jars for 2025 for people without a vacuum blender. Are there any electric vacuum sealers outclass sealers that you have to manually crank to pull the air out? Do you have an updated list of effective sealers that are easily available and not sold out after a few months? All right, Smooth Hershey. So the best vacuum sealer for 2025 and that I've ever found is available now. It's not going to sell out, hopefully. And it's the Pure MVP pump. You can go down to bit.ly/Pure MVP to learn all about it, including my coupon code at that link of DJ5. That is a manual pump. I have tested no electric pump that has ever come close to the Pure MVP pump that pulls out the most oxygen out of a mason jar. In some of my testing, I've gotten up to 85% of the oxygen removed. You know, I'll link down below if I remember links to videos where I've compared it to electric pumps and pumps on Amazon, which may pull like usually 50 to 60% of the oxygen out. You know, also links down below to my Amazon shop so you guys could find the, you know, cheap old plastic pumps, and the one with the blue kind of like gasket on it is the best plastic pump out there. It'll get maybe like high 70s of oxygen removal, although it will break fairly soon because I used to use that one and just keep breaking them and ordering new ones, which is not sustainable for the planet. And of course, also the lids that you'll get with that plastic pump tend to leak, you know, whereas the pure vacuum lids are the properly designed lids that will not leak, that I have not found to leak on me yet, you know, so I haven't found one leak yet when pull the proper vacuum on it. That being said, you know, electric pumps are usually little battery-operated pumps, and some of them may be a little bit faster than others. I generally find that the cheapo electric pumps haven't pumped more than about 65, maybe, percent of the oxygen out. If you want the most powerful, maybe the Tri-Best vacuum pump. But even then, guys, like seriously, just do some pumping on the pure pump. It's not hard to do to achieve more vacuum than you can on an electric pump. So that's what I'd tell you. Next is from Alex Bell 87. Does slow cooking in an Instant Pot preserve more nutrients than pressure cooking? All right, so slow cooking at an Instant Pot, maybe 12, 24 hours, you know, for a longer period of time at a lower temperature versus pressure cooking, right, for a hotter temperature, but still not above the temperature that creates toxins like acrylamides and things. Because it's below 240 degrees for a shorter time. So for example, I'm actually getting some food prep to cook tonight in the Instant Pot. It'll be cooked probably for like 4 to 5 minutes as the time I set on the machine. And clearly, guys, I've looked up the studies, pressure cooking for a short time at a little bit higher temperature, right, will cause less oxidative damage and keep more of the oxygen-sensitive nutrients. The problem with longer cook times and lower temperatures is that the foods are oxidizing longer. Think about it. If you put food in the dehydrator, right? Avocados in the dehydrator, you run air across them for 24 hours. They're oxidizing for 24 hours. They turn black. It will not work, right? If you put avocados in the deep fryer, not that I recommend that because it's a very unhealthy way, but it doesn't turn black because it doesn't oxidize. It doesn't have time to, right? I don't recommend frying or deep frying or even air frying. I only recommend pressure cooking, steaming, and boiling. I'm not a fan of low temperature, long cook times. You do more oxidative damage. Of course, there are pros and cons to each one. I'm in it for the nutrition specifically. I know that maybe flavors could get kind of more complex if you slow cook them for a longer time at a lower temperature than for a fast time at a hotter temperature, right? So that's just me. I do things for the nutrition value, and if you guys want to do things for flavor, maybe, longer cooking times will taste better to you and the flavors will meld together. I'm more interested in the nutrients myself, but, to each their own. All right, next question is from Lavinda Hasrison, 3657. John, what are your thoughts on matcha? Have you ever considered growing the plant or consuming it? Thank you. All right, so matcha is basically Camellia sinensis, or the tea plant that they use to basically make tea. It's normally grown in Japan, although it's also grown in China, but the good stuff comes out of Japan. And it's specific cultivars of tea that they harvest at the right stage, then dry properly, and then grind up into a powder. I encourage you guys to actually eat matcha tea powder, which is basically finely ground matcha, finely ground Camellia sinensis leaves, versus making tea. Now, why would I say that? Because tea are the tea leaves, the same thing, but they've been processed a lot more in general, so nutrients have been leached out. Plus, when you soak the tea bag in water, you're only getting the nutrients that leach out that are water soluble from the tea into your water, whereas if you eat the total matcha tea leaf, it's basically like eating like dried greens. That's what it is. It's just basically dried green powder. So yes, I completely agree with matcha tea powder. I don't think it should be something we eat every single day. Of course, it has caffeine in there, but it also has other, complex phytonutrients like EGCG or whatever, and polyphenols, and I think it's an amazing food, but we don't want to get addicted to it. We don't want to use it as a pick-me-up. We want to use it as an adjunct to our already healthy diet, my personal opinion. I may consume the matcha maybe once every few weeks, if I remember. I mean, I have a bottle of it, but like when I make smoothies and green smoothies, sometimes I'll put it in there, and most of the times I won't. I'd rather, use some like, green powders, such as wheatgrass powder, barley grass powder, or something like that, instead of the matcha. But not to say that matcha is bad. It's just that I don't consume it that regularly, although maybe I should. That being said, I did grow Camellia sinensis, or the tea plant, link down below to my video if I remember, on my gardening channel, where I show where you can buy this plant in California. I went to the nursery that specializes in camellia plants, and they had the tea plant, so I got to really get some nice ones. Unfortunately, in my climate zone where I live at present time, I was not able to keep it alive. So while I did harvest fresh leaves off it and eat, which is even better than the matcha, because you're just harvesting fresh leaves off the tea that have not been dried, and they're a little bit more hard, but you could pick off the leaves and easily put them into a vacuum blender to grind them up. So yeah, that's what I'd tell you. Next question is from Mr. Tapa. I'd love your advice on shopping at farmers markets. Without the organic label, how can I tell if a vendor is truly using sustainable, low pesticide practices? What questions should I ask to ensure their produce isn't just conventionally grown, old, and repackaged? Also, some produce looks dry. How can I tell if it is fresh, how fresh it really is? I want to support small farms, but I also want truly fresh, pesticide-free food. Any tips? That's a good question. These are excellent questions. Number one, I would say always grow it yourself, because I know exactly what was sprayed on these. I know these are beyond organic. I know how these were grown, right? Everything in my garden, I know how it's grown. So, I mean, if you are a consumer, you are trusting the producer. If you are a producer, then you got to trust yourself. So yeah, I encourage you guys all to be producers. I understand a lot of people can't do that. Maybe you live in an apartment. Then I would say at least minimally grow your microgreens from seeds that I'll talk about in another question, because that's a lot healthier than even produce you could buy at the farmer's market. So let's address your questions one at a time. So how can you tell if a vendor is truly using sustainable, low pesticide practices? I mean, honestly, if he doesn't have any documentation, like in Berkeley, California, they have to have certificates that they're organic and what they use and don't use, which is quite progressive. Most places, unfortunately, are not going to have that. But really, here's the thing. You have to trust the person, right? And how many people are honest at farmers markets? I mean, I like to think that people are trustworthy, but unfortunately, actually my real world experience hasn't really fared out that well. So, yeah, so you really don't know unless, you ask the vendor, hey, can I visit your farm, see you growing the food, and you explain to me what you're using on the food, right? And then, of course, when you're at the farm, go to ask to use the bathroom. Usually the bathroom's in the barn, and the barn's where they store all the different pesticides and things they spray on the food. And as you're going to the bathroom, maybe you get lost a little bit and wander around and see what else they're using around the farm and kind of use your eyes to look. I visit farms on a regular basis because I make videos at farms, and I make sure they're legit, right? And I see what they're using, what they're not using, right? And I question them when I find things, not in an invasive way or anything like that, but hey, what's going on? So yeah, that's number one. You can't really tell. You don't really know, okay? I guess the other way is you could buy the produce and then send it off to some expensive lab to get it tested, right? But then that's not really sustainable because maybe they didn't spray that one crop. Anyways, what questions should I ask to ensure the produce isn't just conventionally grown, old, and repackaged? Yeah, that's a huge problem. So if you're in California, basically every farmer's market in California, the farmer or it's a farmer's representative selling the produce, and it must be farm grown unless they're skirting the laws, which I have seen companies do or farmers do in the past. In other states, as far as I'm aware, you could literally just buy produce at the produce terminal wholesale and just sell it at the farmer's market. That happens in my state here in Nevada. So the Nevada, most growers, farmers selling at the farmer's market are just reselling crap. And it just sucks because most people falsely believe that they actually grew it. Okay, yeah, they're growing lychees in the States somewhere. And it's not Hawaii, and it's not Florida. And no, they're importing it. I could totally tell it's imported produce. What questions could you ask? Okay, so number one, first question always is, hey, when did you guys harvest this? Ask specific questions. That should trick them up. Oh, I harvested it this morning. I got up at 6 a.m. You should be able to look at the produce. If they got up at 6 a.m., man, it shouldn't be brown. It shouldn't be all wrinkled up. It should look really fresh, right? And also, too, you want to judge their character. If you ask them, hey, when did you harvest this? And they take, they think about it for, a minute or two, then it's like maybe some red flags go off in your brain, because like then they're trying to think of an answer. Oh, what do I tell them, right? And like, oh, they say a week ago. Oh, like, well, how did you store it during the week? And why did you pick it a week ago? I mean, just ask them questions, I guess the other thing to know is you want to ask them, the question is, how much compost do you apply to your soil? Generally, compost is the main organic fertilizer that organic farms use, aside from, organic approved fertilizer. But generally, a good organic farm would apply compost because it's also very cheap and inexpensive compared to buying even organic fertilizer that can cost a lot of money. Hopefully they say a large number. I don't know how large the number it should be, but it should be a big number. And then you could ask them, hey, when did you last apply the compost, right? You could also ask them, hey, we could go into all kinds of questions, but I really want to just drive into like the specific ones. I guess the other question I'd ask, so that's about fertilization. And if they say they don't use compost, then say, oh, how do you give fertility to your crops, right? And like, oh, we don't put nothing on our crops. Well, that could be a viable answer, but the problem is, if you think about how crops are grown, every year, these plants right here in my garden are pulling nutrients out of my ground to create their leaves. Now, the nutrients are stored in the leaves. In nature, these leaves would drop on the ground and then compost in place, and then these nutrients that were pulled out of the ground are returning to the ground, but then these are going to cut down and then put in my compost bin. I compost it and then put the compost back on my garden. So if somebody says, we don't use any fertilizer, maybe they have good soil organic matter already, and, there's a soil system that will recycle nutrients up to a certain point. But, at that point, there's a point of diminishing returns when crop, yields will go down, and then that's going to hurt their bottom line. So that, a smart farmer really wouldn't do that. But I'm digressing here. So I guess the other question you really want to ask them is, how do you deter pests? And just ask them that question, how do you deter pests? Like, oh, we release ladybugs. Like, to me, if they say that, that's bullshit. Like, ladybugs mostly just fly off, dude. Unless they're in a greenhouse. If they grow in a greenhouse and they release ladybugs, okay, that's legit. But if they say some bullshit like we release ladybugs and they're in the middle of a field, that's bullshit. And so then they say, oh, we spray some stuff. So like, oh, okay, so, what do you spray? Ask them specifically. And then if they could, maybe they know or maybe they don't know, then you could like Google it on your phone or whatever. You could ask them, is it OMRI certified, right? And OMRI, everything they spray in their farm, if they're considered organic, should be OMRI certified. I think these are probably the most important questions we want to find out, how they add fertility, if it's through organics or not, and how they control the pests. And then also when it was picked. Those are the most important 3 questions for me. And of course, the most important one is, can I visit your farm, to see how you grow foods, because I'm very interested. Don't tell them because I want to inspect you to find out if you're growing organic or not. And then of course, the other thing I'd recommend is actually get to know your produce. Go to your local, just regular grocery stores, right? And look at the produce there, right? In the produce industry, I guess for better or for worse, I think it's for worse mostly, everything is totally uniform. If you go to your local grocery store, like go to 2 or 3 of them, and each grocery store has the same exact looking peppers. And you know how peppers look from the grocery store. They always look the same pretty much. And then you go to the farmer's market and those peppers look exactly the same as the ones at the 3 grocery stores you went to. Dude, they're reselling stuff. Because I'll tell you guys, when I grow my own food, like everything's going to be a different shape, a different size. Some are going to have some holes in it. But if everything looks perfect like the grocery store, it is from the grocery store, man. So, that's all I can tell you about it. It's sad in this day and age that people lie to make money, but, that's how it is. All right. Next question is from Gil Elk. I make hummus from blending cooked garbanzo beans and tahini, etc. Are there benefits to vacuum blending cooked foods? What is your opinion and why? I would say absolutely yes. Well, cooking does destroy some nutrients. Some nutrients can be made more bioavailable because you're breaking down cell walls. That being said, what I'll also tell you is that once you cook it, you are losing nutrients, but then why do you want to lose further nutrients through blending it, right? Because further oxidation damage will be lost through blending, especially when you're high-speed blending in a blender and you're mixing in air, right? 2 things happen. Number 1, during the blending process, you're introducing air while you're blowing open more cell walls than the cooking alone. So actually, this is good for better absorption. besides cooking, because I have a video on that recently where I discuss, blending, cooking plus blending to see how much more bioavailability we have, and they did spinach in the study. But nonetheless, it's great that you're blending it open, but the problem is as you blend it open, you're breaking open more cell walls, and now you're literally pushing oxygen into the cells to oxidize more of these vital, oxygen-sensitive nutrients, a lot of which, of course, were already broken down in the cooking process, but why reduce it even further when you don't have to, okay? Furthermore, if you store your hummus, which I'm sure you're making your hummus in batches because you're not just making enough to eat for that meal, I make things in big batches, you want to prevent the dissolved oxygen in your finished mixture, because when the dissolved oxygen is in the finished mixture, what happens is those oxygen molecules react with all the food around it and then cause it to oxidize quicker, right? And then it starts to spoil faster and nutrients go down more quickly. That's why the best practice is to vacuum blend and then vacuum store your mixtures afterwards. And this video is posting after May 1st, so I'll put a link down below to my video of the new Tribes Backspin blender. This is the perfect blender for processing cooked beans or even raw beans in a hummus, because it basically has an outer chamber that runs one direction and the blade runs the other direction. So this basically forces food into the blades without you having to use a tamper. In my original demo, I basically make a frozen fruit sorbet using 100% frozen fruit, no liquid, put it in the machine, come back, and it's basically frozen fruit sorbet. I put 1 pound of nuts, including mac nuts and cashews, no oil added, no tamper, no nothing. I turn the machine on, walk away for 4 minutes, come back, and it's like the creamiest nut butter I've ever seen. And of course, before it blends up, it also pulls out up to 75% of the oxygen as well. And then I would say vacuum seal your mason jars that you seal it in with the Pure MVP pump, available at bit.ly/Pure MVP. Once again, links down below because somebody asked for that in a previous question. So hope that helps you out there. Next question is from Vancouver-born. Hi, John. Which kinds of seaweeds do you eat, if any, and how do you like to prepare them, raw or heat processed? I make a nori rolls and add kelp and dulse to raw Caesar salad dressing, and I add it to the cooked miso soup, but I don't eat those foods super often. Do you think we should be consuming more seaweeds? P.S. I honestly love the way you say soup. So if you could say it when you read my comment, that'd be awesome. All right, Vancouver-born. So the way I make soup is actually I basically juice my peppers, right? And actually then I'll take the pepper juice and then blend it with nuts and seeds. Sometimes I'll blend it with actually pre-cooked beans to make it thicker, so I can actually use less nuts, and add miso and herbs and spices and whatnot in there, even like sauerkraut, and blend that into like a nice thick kind of soup, which is based around pepper juice instead of just water, because water adds kind of hopefully filtered water to what you're eating, but pepper juice adds the structured living water plus all the different vitamin C and phytochemicals and vitamins and minerals from the juice itself. So yes, and then to my soup, I may add just like actually seaweed to it. So for example, I have a seaweed powder that sometimes will just go in. It's like a mix of 13 different seaweeds that are ground up and powdered. This way I get a nice wide spectrum of seaweeds in me. In addition, I have some Atlantic kelp. It's available at most better health food stores here in the States. And it's actually just frozen, so then I'll just thaw that out and put that in. That's my favorite because that's the least processed. Of course, I also source seaweeds from usually Asian countries. Usually it's either Korea or Japan. I don't generally try to buy Chinese seaweed. I don't generally trust it. I also, and usually that kind is wakame. I like the wakame. And then also I get the dulse. The dulse is usually from like Eastern United States or Canada. I love the dulse. I also eat the sea spaghetti. That's from Europe. And I have a lot of different seaweeds. I mean, I've even harvested my own seaweed from the ocean in California, which I don't even know the types, but basically all the seaweeds are edible. So, here's the thing. I think that seaweed should not be a staple in our diet that we eat every single day because you can get too much iodine from it. I think that also, on the other hand, that, the seaweeds provide an essential mineral, iodine, to us that are deficient in land plants. So you need to eat enough of it, but not too much. I'll put like a little bit in a big soup mix that I may eat over a week. And then, the next week I'm eating like a salad that has no seaweed in it. You know, maybe if you eat a little bit every day, that could be good. I tend to eat a little bit more, less frequently. So, you know, I'm not going to tell you the exact amount to eat because it varies depending on what seaweed you're eating. Some seaweeds contain higher amounts of iodine than others. And of course, there also can be, you know, heavy metals and other things and certain minerals in higher concentrations that are not optimal. That's why a lot of seaweeds may have a Prop 65 warning, depending on where it was grown. I also, of course, like to eat nori that I usually just wrap up in a wrap with, like, I could use like cauliflower rice as the rice instead of cooked rice, or these days I might make a cooked purple rice, which actually I haven't done yet. Usually I just use cauliflower rice because I still default to raw whenever possible, and I don't try to like add heat processed stuff unless I have to. I think seaweed should be consumed raw. Personally, that's how I consume them. But hey, if you heat up a soup and then you want to put some seaweeds in there, you know, that's not the end of the world. You know, I think that the seaweed, the main benefit for them are, yes, there's some phytochemicals and some auxins in there, but I think the main benefit is especially the iodine and some of the trace minerals that are not existing in land plants, because most farmers, unfortunately, are not putting in sea minerals or rock minerals like I do in my garden. All right. Next question is from Dream Thread. Do you consume refined sugar? Why or why not? So absolutely not. I know there's been a big thing lately, a reemergence of some raw vegans adding raw sugar to their smoothies because fruit's just not sweet enough. I think that is asinine and that is crazy. I do not recommend that. I do not recommend refined processed sugar. I don't even recommend like coconut sugar or any kind of these things. There's like, the only sugar I recommend is actually date sugar, because literally date sugar is just basically dehydrated dates that are ground up into a powder. Link down below to my video where I buy all the date sugars on Amazon and test them all so that you guys don't have to. Date sugar is the only sugar I recommend. Other sweeteners that I use, I like to just use whole dates and just blend it up into things. So hey, if your smoothie's not sweet enough, that's, you know, with fruits, just add some dates. I don't even recommend doing that because, like, to me, that's adding too much sugar. My goal is to not eat more sugar. My goal is to eat actually more complex kinds of carbohydrates, you know, such as purple potatoes that actually are lower in sugar than russet potatoes, which is what most people eat. And then, of course, most people eat russet potatoes that are fried into French fries or potato chips, which I do not recommend. You know, I also like to get beans and other foods in me to diversify my calorie source, because sugar, in my opinion, is not the ultimate calorie source for humans. Yes, it should be a part of our calorie source in the whole food format, but it shouldn't be the main thing we're going for. I think many raw vegans that just focus on the sugar are causing premature aging, especially cross-linking due to collagen breakdown due to excess sugar consumption. My personal opinion on that. Of course, one of the sugars I do use that some people may consider processed is I use a very dark maple syrup that is high in polyphenols, right? This to me is the healthiest kind of quote-unquote sugar. I don't necessarily recommend honey. I used to eat it in the olden days, but I rarely eat it these days. And when I do eat it, it's from like a friend who I get it from, who treats his bees properly, because, you know, most of the honey industry basically treats their bees bad and steals the honey from them, which I'm not in alignment with. So nonetheless, I've moved more towards eating maple syrup, high quality, on rare occasions. I could have a bottle and it could last me like 2 months, right? But yeah, I go through date sugar a lot more quickly, or just the whole dates, all right? All right, next question is from ProvoMan74. Dear John, what are your thoughts on organic apple cider vinegar? Do you use it? Good for the microbiome, or it kills certain microbiome strains? Ching. All right, so, you know, I'm planning on doing actually a video on vinegar and microbiome or gut health. And, you know, I know there's some raw vegans out there that hate vinegar, especially if you like people into the natural hygiene movement or that were raised in the natural hygiene way. They say vinegar contains acetic acid, and acetic acid could burn hole in plastic and all this crap. And yes, while acetic acid, straight acetic acid can do that, right? The vinegar is diluted down, and acetic acid, once again, is one component of many components of vinegar, right? I myself, I used to eat apple cider vinegar in small amounts. That being said, I rarely eat it these days. My preferred vinegar is actually a balsamic vinegar. Actually, I use that probably the most. Next up, I use a raspberry raw vinegar that's not pasteurized. I also use a raw, unpasteurized pomegranate vinegar, right? The things that these three vinegars have in common are high polyphenol content. Apple cider vinegar, while they do have polyphenols, it's a lot lower polyphenol content compared to, grapes that have, that could be purple, or the, raspberries, or the pomegranates, right? So I like to think of foods as functional. How can I maximize my nutrition out of the food I'm eating? And I've identified these vinegars as the most health promoting and beneficial. Also, they have really nice flavors to them. I mean, of course, I think I like the raspberry vinegar. Tastes like no other. It almost tastes like raspberry juice, but a little bit sour. It just has a really nice punch. It's from Spain, organic. And then the balsamic is probably my second favorite. That's a little bit more thicker and has like a more complex flavor. So I love that a lot. And yeah, so I mean, some of the research on vinegars, like it's not like vinegar's bad or good. Really, the question is, it depends, right? How much are you eating it? How often are you eating it? Are you having a vinegar-based diet? No, I mean, if you want to, here's the thing. If vinegar gets you to eat more salad, then it's a good thing, right? I don't take vinegar shots. I don't recommend vinegar shots. I do like to put vinegar on my heat processed foods. Usually the balsamic. In my dressings, I'll just put balsamic or one of the other vinegars into the dressing and then just blend it all up in together. So it's like I'm eating a very small quantity, but I think it can be health promoting, if not overdone, and I think people just get crazy. Apple cider vinegar is the best and they dump it on everything. No, at least get different kinds of vinegars and rotate. And make sure if you guys get a vinegar like I'm talking about, you get a real vinegar, because a lot of these vinegars are flavored and they have additives and all kinds of bullshit in there. So yeah, I mean, I get high-end balsamic. It's like $50 a bottle, $40, $50 a bottle. And the raspberry and the pomegranate vinegar also, I mean, they ain't cheap. They're like $20 a bottle or something. It's not like the cheap stuff you could just go down to the grocery store and buy. All right. Next question is from Terrific. What's your favorite oil-free salad dressing? So my favorite oil-free salad dressing is, I mean, honestly, I don't really have one. I basically just blend up nuts and seeds, whatever nut I may have, cashews, pecans, walnuts, macadamia nuts, right? Sometimes I use pistachios, blended with some kind of fruit. This could be sweet fruit, could be orange juice, could be just whole tangerines, could be bell pepper juice, could be just whole bell peppers, could be tomatoes, right? If I'm like lame, then I'll use like coconut water, and then I'll add some herbs and spices, maybe some miso, maybe some coconut aminos, maybe some vinegar, maybe some nutritional yeast that contain B12, and just blend it up into a nice dressing. I don't really have a favorite. I always rotate, and I don't just get stuck on a favorite, because when you get stuck on a favorite, once again, you're limiting your diversity. And I basically, I got mint today, so I pick some mint and that goes in my dressing. Or I got basil today, basil goes in my dressing. Or I got dill today, hey, I harvest a bunch of dill because I got to use it. Or actually right now I got cilantro I got to use, so that's going in dressings, right? So yeah, I encourage you guys to eat at diversity and don't ever get stuck on, this is the favorite, so I'm eating it every single day, right? Okay. All right, next question from ProvoMan74. Hi, John. Is it true that spirulina and chlorella are stimulant per Dr. Tim Trader in your recent interview with him? What are your thoughts about taking these supplements from a raw vegan standpoint? I have been raw over the past 10 years. Thanks, Martin. All right, so while I agree with Tim on like 95% of the things he would say, like more people need to eat fruit, more people need to eat like vegetables and, eat natural foods and not process their foods. I did make a video that probably has already aired where we discuss some of these controversial topics such as supplementation. I think we discuss the algae powders. Like, I'm a fan of algae powders. Once again, I don't think you should down them every single day. I think that they can supplement a healthy diet. We are land creatures, and I think that land vegetables should make up the majority of our diet, but I see lots of benefits in the algae powders, such as the Spirulina and the Chlorella specifically. Also very critical and important to get a non-contaminated version. A lot of these algae powders, unfortunately, these days are coming out of China with very low quality standards, and the big problem with the algae powders, if they have contamination in them, then they're a huge problem. They are quite toxic, as some plant-based doctors like to point out. That being said, every food has pros and cons, so I want to maximize the pros of foods by making sure it's grown in the best ways possible without the toxins, because it has contamination, and then processed in the best ways to preserve the most nutrition, such as being freeze-dried, or actually there's companies out there that'll sell you guys raw spirulina that is just fresh, that's my favorite. I get it every time I go to the LA farmers markets. Down there, I usually get it at the one at Mar Vista. The lady's usually down there. So yeah, so I think that, we should eat it. You know, should it be a staple in our diet? No. Should we eat it maybe a couple times a week in a smoothie or something? Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a good food because once again, we want to diversify the foods. And if you're eating a ton of it, I could see how it could potentially be more problematic. But if you're just eating a little bit here and there, I think that's going to be of benefit personally. And I think about that like that on many foods, not just the algae powders personally, such as the vinegar also that Dr. Tim was not a fan of personally either. All right, next question is from Health Glows Net. Hi, John. Thanks for this video. She's referring to like a soup video that I made. Would you please tell me how much fatty foods you eat in a salad? I heard you say in other videos 1 to 2 ounces, but in this video, you use 3 cups of seeds. Thanks. Thank you in advance for your reply. All right, so in that video specifically, I was making a bulk food preparation. So in a bulk food prep, I may use 3 cups of seeds in the soup mix. That goes in a huge bowl that I may make 6 to 8, maybe sometimes up to 9 quarts of food, and then I eat 1 quart a day. So you want to divide 3 cups into maybe like 8 quarts, and then how much seeds are in each quart at that point, right? So it's diluted down. Yeah, so you know, my goal is to eat 1 to 2 ounces of nuts and seeds a day. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit more. I mean, maybe on rare days it's like 0. But yeah, I always like to get some nuts and seeds in. Published studies show that eating some amounts of nuts and seeds, right? Not going overboard, because once again, we don't want to like crowd out other foods that are more healthy than nuts and seeds. Not to say that nuts and seeds are not healthy. I think the total exclusion of nuts and seeds is definitely unhealthy personally. But we want to eat enough, but not overeat them. All right, and I don't really measure. I usually just take a handful of nuts. If I'm making like 1 blender recipe for 1 salad, I'll put a handful of nuts. But usually I do batch food preparation where I put in a few handfuls because I'm making like multiple quarts or multiple jars that I'll eat over several days. So hope this explains when you see John put all these seeds and nuts in his recipe. It's because I'm making it in bulk and I eat 1 quart a day. There's no way I could eat that whole bowl at once. All right. Next question is from Margaret Helmuth. 7337. Hello, just want to say I love sprouting, but I want to ask those of you who might know, how do you prevent your sprouts from having E. coli or salmonella, or is that not as big a thing to worry about as some make it seem? All right, no, that is quite a big thing actually. There's been sprout outbreaks, and usually this is in commercial grow operations when they have improper handling procedures and or not using the right seeds. So for home sprouting, usually this is not a concern, but there's a big caveat. The caveat is you need to buy seeds that have been certified for sprouting. Seeds that are certified from sprouting from a legitimate seed seller, such as sproutman.com, right, or sproutpeople.com, right? These people like focus on selling seeds for sprouting that have been tested for E. coli and for bacteria before they sell them. The reason why sprouts get E. coli or bacteria on them is because maybe the plant's growing in nature, right? The plant makes the seeds, some birds fly overhead, it poops on the plant, then now the seeds got contaminated with the bird poop that goes in to this whole big lot of seeds, and then the bird poop gets mixed up with all the seeds, and then all that bird poop contaminates, and the bird poop has E. coli, and now all the seeds in that batch have E. coli. Right? That's why good sprouting seeds are tested to ensure they're safe. So that's why I only encourage you guys to do sprouting with sprouting seeds that are certified, you know, tested for sprouting from a reputable seller. Don't buy your sprouting seeds on Amazon. There's a whole bunch of sellers that just buy regular seeds not meant for sprouting and then sell them as sprouting seeds, but you are putting yourself and your health at risk. All right. Next question is from Olive Ostrich 903. How are you feeling now that you eat beans and more protein? You're so cool. All right, thank you. So I feel great, honestly. You know, like, honestly, like, one of the reasons why I changed was my blood test wasn't doing well. I was also getting headaches because I was eating too much fruit, so I need to actually not eat fruit. And then I'm like, what else can I eat? And for a while, I tried to do it with, like, greens and drinking more green juice and all these things. And I'm like, you know what? This is not sustainable. So then I started heat processing certain foods, heat processing beans, some grains. You know, I do einkorn usually, oatmeal, I do buckwheat, do quinoa, do millet, do amaranth, do teff. Also do like the, you know, the purple, red, green rice, black rice. I do the purple potatoes. I do, of course, do many different kinds of beans. purple sweet potatoes. Yeah, I do so many different foods now and diversify, and I'm feeling a lot better. I feel more grounded, not as like spacey, because I think I was just getting too much sugar in me. Personally, not, you know, and that's for me personally. I'm not going to tell you guys what you should eat, but I would tell you everybody should be aware of how you're feeling after you eat certain meals. See how food makes you feel. You know, and that's one indicator. It's not the main indicator, because, you know, you could have the false indicator like, ate fruit, feel great, because I'm like full of sugar. But yeah, I mean, I'm just feeling more grounded. I sleep better at night too, because I'm not all wired from all the sugar. But that's just me personally. Each person needs to figure out, you know, what's going to work best for them. And I think nuance is really the answer. You know, I think the people that say, oh, we need to eat all this fruit and it works for everybody, you know, I definitely believe that that's not accurate. Everybody's unique and different, and at different stages in our lives, we're going to need to do and eat different things. All right, next question is from Rick Stokes, 2239. Since when do people ever think of bananas as a source of protein? LOL. You'd be amazed. So there are some diets like 30 bananas a day diet where basically you're just pounding bananas, and they say that if you eat enough fruit, you're gonna get enough protein. You know, and so yeah, fruitarians think they could get all their protein from fruit, which I will say is possible if you plan your fruits accordingly and don't just haphazardly eat fruits and you eat enough calories. Once again, links down below to my video on how fruitarians can be protein deficient if you are eating fruit haphazardly, like I have seen some YouTubers eat. All right, next question is from Eric Pollard. Bonobos eat leaves, but only tender, sweet, not dark and bitter. The only leaf available to us is that category is lettuce. Why do they get such a variety and we don't? Why can't farmers/markets produce the same leaves bonobos eat for us to eat? All right, Eric, so I want to do some corrections here. So the first correction is bonobos eat leaves, but only tender, sweet, not dark and bitter. That is not accurate. The accurate statement is that bonobos prefer tender and sweet shoots and not the more mature greens. But bonobos, like myself, are opportunistic eaters. When it's springtime where the bonobos live in all the new fresh shoots and leaves are growing, and that's what they got to eat, that's what they're going to eat because that's what's available, right? If it's a time of year where the plants are no longer putting out shoots and tender leaves, then, you know, they will pick the old mature leaves, right? They don't have a problem with that. So, you know, there's this like ideal thing that fruitarians or people like to say that, oh, we only should eat tender greens. That's bullshit. Like my personal opinion. Like I prefer to top the tops of my plants, right? And like I'll top these leaves up here to eat tender and fresh in salads. But if these lower leaves that are more hardcore, I don't have a problem with steaming them or juicing them or blending them so that they'll be more digestible. I think everybody should do this personally, all right? That's the first thing I want to discuss, you know, about the bonobos. Next up, you also say the only leaves available to us in this category is lettuce. So I would personally say that's incorrect. Most health food stores in America that I visited will have microgreens, which are the most tender greens you could eat, even more so than lettuce. Next up, of course, many stores have like baby kale, baby arugula. Spring mix are all basically baby greens that are young and tender. I think they're like mush and they're terrible, but my personal opinion on that. Even the spinach leaves you get are like baby spinach leaves. They're not like full-grown big spinach leaves. So all these leaves are tender. There's quite a wide variety available for you guys at a local grocery store or health food store, in my personal opinion. But then also, once again, fruitarians want to think, oh, only lettuce is good for humans because that's what bonobos eat or something, and that's the only thing available for us. There's so many more things available for us, all right? And then it says, why do they get such a variety and we don't, right? Wow. Think about what you're saying. Why do they get such a variety and we don't? All right, so bonobos get such a variety because they live out in nature. They have thousands of plants that they get to choose from, and they inherently know what they've been taught from their parents and whatnot, and what they inherently know instinctively the plants that are good to eat and not good to eat. We're so smart, or on the other hand, so stupid, that we think the only food we can eat comes out of a grocery store, right? And that's what's available to us. No, you guys need to learn about eating wild foods that you could harvest near you. Wild foods come out of cracks in the ground and in your lawn, the dandelions and all these other foods. Look up Katrina Blair, another fellow raw vegan who encourages and teaches people about wild foraging, wild foods around us. Most people are not aware of these things. Of course, I encourage you guys to, instead of be a consumer, like all you guys out there, or most of you guys out there listening to this are consumers because you go to the store and that's where you buy your food, or you go to the farmer's market and buy your food. Become a producer and grow your own food. Then you get to select what you want to grow, and you can have a wider variety than even the bonobos potentially if you have enough land. And then, you know, you could eat wild baby, like chocolate mint leaves. Like right here, I'll do it right now. Wild, tender baby mint leaves. Is this not suitable for humans? Wow. That's amazing, guys. I wish you were here to try this. Anyways, yeah, so it says, why can't farmers / markets produce the same leaves bonobos eat for us? All right, so here's the thing. Farmers are going to only grow what sells. Most people are not going to eat what the bonobos eat, right? So if that's what you want, literally, I encourage you guys to grow your own food, because then you could just research what the bonobos eat and then grow it yourself if your climate zone allows you to do that, right? That being said, I do grow a lot of my own crops and a lot of unique crops that literally money can't buy. If you guys want to learn more about different greens that you may not be available at a local farmer's market or supermarket, check out your local Asian market. You know, they tend to have a lot more greens that are available, but then do your research carefully. Most of the greens at Asian markets are edible raw, although there are some that will need to be cooked or they're actually quite toxic. And of course, I'd also encourage you to look into wild foraging foods that can be eaten raw. Of course, many wild forage foods also must be cooked because they are quite toxic as well. So yeah, so I would encourage you to watch a movie called Earthlings. Where people as humans, we seem to have like a human-centric kind of point of view, whereas humans are Earthlings along with all the other creatures that inhabit this Earth. So we need to think as a broader thing on the planet. And yeah, I think that's very important for people, and not just be human-centric, and that we are the center of the universe. And why can't we have what bonobos have? Well, hey, why can't we live where bonobos live? Maybe you want to live out in the jungle with them and then follow them around and eat what they eat, right? Yeah, I don't know if I'd do that, but I'm glad growing my own food. All right, now to the last question here. Christopher Gonzalez, 6290. Can someone please help me out? Does John have a recipe book of all the juice recipes he drinks? All right, so I do have a recipe book. Link is down below, but then there's maybe a handful of juice recipes that I made when I made that book. That being said, my honest answer is this. Like, I really don't want you guys to be limited. Like, oh, John drinks this recipe, so I'm going to drink that recipe. What I drink is for me based on the foods I have at that time, right? My recipes are infinite. I never drink the same recipe twice because I always have different ingredients that are growing in my garden, different ingredients I'm able to source locally, organically, and inexpensively. And I make different creations every single day. So, I mean, yesterday's juice was basically straight cucumber juice. I then rejuiced the straight cucumbers with jicama to get a second extraction, right? And actually, I made a video on this. So, I mean, I think the way to know what juices I drink is to watch my other YouTube channel, Discount Juicers. On that channel, I basically make the different recipes, and every recipe is different. You know, I do make a green juice. And the other thing I'll tell you is that I'll link down below a video where I made that tells you how to make your own recipes, because really that's where I think it's at. You should really focus on making your own recipes based on what is local, what's available, what's organic, what's inexpensive near you, so that you can be more sustainable and not have to get these crazy ingredients that I tend to buy, you know? So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, I mean, the main juices I drink a green juice. I like to make a root juice. And then I'll just have random juices like for hydration, like the cucumber, like straight cucumber juice, or cucumber with jicama, cucumber celery with jicama, maybe straight celery with cucumber, celery, cucumber, jicama. Yeah, and then I tend to use very little fruits these days. My goal is to blend the fruits up or eat them whole if I can. All right, so if you guys enjoyed this episode today, please be sure to give the video a big thumbs up and share this with other raw vegans you think it can help as well. Also, be sure to click that subscribe button right down below so you don't miss out on my new and upcoming episodes that are coming out every 5 to 7 days. I wouldn't want you to miss any single one. Make sure you click the little bell so you get notified as many videos come out. And finally, be sure to check out past episodes. The past episodes are a wealth of knowledge. Over 800 episodes at this time on this channel dedicated to you guys all about the different elements of eating a healthy, raw, fruit and vegetable-based, plant-based diet. Once again, links down below in the description of some of the videos that I've already discussed previously in this Q&A. So with that, my name is John Coli with OKRaw.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keeping your fresh fruits and vegetables. They're always the best.